I'm really excited, and I know I want to also have a lot of time for us to get into conversation. It's a lot to talk about with this film, and I think most of it is just as the film is doing. How do we move from conversation into action? So I hope in our panel that we have some time to talk up here. But then, I'm the organizer myself. As Freeman said, I'm trying to pay my freedom dues. And when you're trying to pay freedom dues, you don't leave a room without action steps. So I'm really excited, and younger, if you will, and coming to this work with people who have set the path for me, and just really excited to, talk about this film. And my awakening to this film, I think probably comes through hip hop samples. Absolutely. All right, of like the vocals, the countdown, and seeing that get sampled, and I'm like, where's this from? And I learned about the movie. I ordered a DVD, and just am awakened to this whole world of, the Black Third World Revolution, this sort of like age of Black rebellion and all the thought and organizing and action and ideas that went into it. That was my entry point into the Spook Who Sat by the Door. Then I had to go back to the book. But I guess just to open it up, we got the bios out of the way, but from where you are and your grounding, like, how did Spook Who Sat by the Door enter into your life, and where were you in that time? And tell us about the context.
Wow, all right. So I was born in 1970, so I wasn't around to see the Spook come out in the theater. But my intro to the Spook Who Sat by the Door comes in the late 80s, early 90s. All right, this is during that golden era of hip hop. You have Public Enemy, you have KRS-One, you have Queen Latifah, you have all these dynamic, Afrocentric, this movement in hip hop. All right.
Right.
So I read the autobiography of Malcolm X in '89, '88, and then because of me being on campus and going into the Minority Affairs office on campus, I see the Spook Who Sat by the Door, and somebody gave me, the tip, like, you need to read this, right? So I read the Spook, and it's one of those books like the autobiography of Malcolm X. It gives you, it pricks your imagination, like, wow, like we can be heroes, like we can lead a revolution, all right? And then you see the parallels with Public Enemy, the S1Ws, Professor Griff. You see the Spook Who Sat by the Door in the music videos, all right? If you watch, by the time I get to Arizona, the music video, when the S1Ws are putting the bombs up and blowing up the, blowing up the cars and stuff, you see that, right?
Right.
So for me, it was just a natural connection. It was my introduction. But parallel to that, in terms of my work with the Black History 101 Mobile Museum, along with being a collector, as well as being an educator, I'm also working in the hip hop industry as well. So in Detroit, I'm working with a young man by the name of Proof. He was with a group called D12. I was his manager. So I'm traveling the world with him, collecting artifacts or whatever. But I ended up meeting in 2002 Professor Griff of Public Enemy.
Yes.
He sees my work and says, yo, I want to help you out along the way here. So I'm working with Griff. But a few years prior to that, I'm working with the Last Poets. So with the Last Poets, I've been working with them for 35 years now. But I get a call from Umar bin Hassan back in 2002. Umar knows I'm a collector. He knows I have an original poster of the Spook Who Sat by the Door in my living room.
Yeah.
He calls me up. He's in Chicago. Yo, Khalid, I want you to speak to somebody. Sam Greenlee.
Wow.
So Sam in 2002, on this phone call, this first phone call, he says, yo, if you ever come to Chicago, meet me at Miller's Pub. That's his favorite pub. I'll sign that poster for you. All right, so I go to Chicago, I meet him at Miller's, and he signs my poster. From 2002 to 2014, when he passed, we were inseparable. We traveled, his birthday is on the 14th? We celebrated our birthdays together. But he traveled with the museum. So imagine showing up somewhere with 150 artifacts on display. You got Professor Griff, Sam Greenlee in this collection, and man, it was amazing. So just to give you some background on how this kind of ties together in my history. He was my brother. Yeah.
Thank you.
And real quick, Sam introduces me to my wife. We've been married 16 years.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. That's going to be hard to follow.
But I meet Mike through Professor Griff.
Oh,
I don't know if you remember that or not.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I had Chuck D here a couple times.
Yeah.
Can folks hear me? Yeah. That was such a great presentation. Let's give Doc a good round. I want to thank Hakim because I have an autographed copy of the Spook set by the Actually, it's not autographed, but I had to top what he said. Having said that, let me just say this. I'm going to answer your question directly, but that introduction that you all heard about me, which was about maybe 27 minutes long, let me just say this about that. I really appreciate those types of introductions, but I always tell this story. Just give me 30 seconds. It reminds me of the sergeant on the battlefield, and I'm one of 10 privates on the battlefield. And the sergeant comes over to the 10 privates and say, hey, I need one of you to volunteer to take that hill. It's going to be a suicide mission, but if you take the hill, then we'll win the battle, win the war, we'll name a city after you. The sergeant says, I'll turn my back. When I turn around, whoever step forward, that's the hero. Sergeant turns around. When he turns back, he sees Michael Coard standing forward, and he's praising me for being such a great man. What he doesn't realize is this. I never stepped forward. The 9 cowards stepped back. So when I look at black lawyers, and I look at black doctors, and black dentists, and black CPAs, and black ministers, and black imams, they all need to stop stepping back. Because I'm not doing anything more than anybody else. I'm born and raised in North Philly, 20th and York. So I'm just a regular guy from the hood who got lucky. And that's why it's so important for us to realize that everybody can do this. In response to the great question you posed, for me, the book is the blueprint. Now, he said how old he was. I'm not saying how old I am and what year I was born, but I will say this. I knew about this book before I knew about this book. What I mean is this. When I decided to go, when I was at Cheney University, for example, they needed a student to be on the board of trustees, a student representative. At the time, a Republican governor, Thornburg, was the governor. And something hit me because I had an interview in Harrisburg to see if I'd be selected. I switched parties. I became a Republican for one day. I went up to Harrisburg as a Republican, interviewed with Thornburg, got in as the student trustee, and began to raise hell. And then as I graduated from Cheney, I'm looking for law schools, and Ohio State had this really great affirmative action program. I went there looking like a black, conservative Republican kid. I mean, white shirt. I need to switch you out for the better audio. Testing. Oh, that's much better, much better, much better. Let me go back to everything I said from the beginning about the autograph book. No. I think you heard it all. So when I went to law school, I went there looking like, and that's why I say I knew about the spook who sat by the door before I knew about it. I didn't know about it until maybe about 3 or 4 years after graduating from law school. But I knew that I wanted to get into law school, so I went there clean shaven, white shirt, red tie, navy blue suit, and said all the right things. No locks, no beard, no earring. Got in there, they were impressed with me at this nice Negro boy who's applying to their law school to make them look like they were really doing something in terms of affirmative action, but it was all performative stuff, just to say we got a black kid from North Philly. But for me, it was always, and even, I mean, I'm a Pan-African socialist, but in my property classes, you'd have thought I was a hardcore capitalist. I was talking about ownership, you know, by private industry, just saying all the right things, getting the A's, taking the bar exam, passing the bar exam, and then realized that slowly but surely, I'd be the spook who sat by the door. And my first 5, 10 years of being a lawyer, you didn't hear a peep out of me. Maybe my 11th, 12th years, I decided to take a beard, put the earring, and grew the locks. And I always tell young black men and young black women in college who are thinking about going to law school or med school, whatever, you gotta be that spook. Because you can't let them know what they're dealing with until it's too late. And I love it when I see beautiful chocolate young girls and young boys with the locks and the African-centered look. And culturally and spiritually, I want that for them. But as a strategist, I'm like, maybe because you're so revolutionary, we don't want you to be shot down before you get in. I got a case coming up, a murder case coming up, and I was able to get it's a long story, but I'll make a long story short. I was able, in Pennsylvania, you can't get bail for first and second degree murder, but third degree murder, you can't get bail. We got it knocked down to third degree, and the trial's coming up. So he asked me, he's about 25, 26 years old. He asked me if he should cut his locks for the trial. And I hated to tell him yes. I mean, it's almost like the whole notion of Samson losing his power. But for me, it was go in there, look like an all-American boy, get an acquittal, grow your locks, and become Mumia Abu Jamal. But we need Mumia outside as opposed to inside. So that was like a 15-minute answer to a very short question. But the answer is we have to be strategic. And sometimes it hurts to be strategic. It kills me to tell young black women and young black men and young black others to cut their locks, to take the dashiki off, to cut all that stuff off on social media about being revolutionary. But if you're going to be strategic, then you got to play that game. Get in, and you can do so much damage from within.
Beautiful. It's really interesting that you say that. So I'm reading Dr. L. Hakim's children's book, ABCs of Black History. Zora Neale Hurston. Zora Neale Hurston had this amazing quote: "I got one mind for me and one mind for the master to see." And to talk about being strategic, that's sort of like, I think about that in the film and in the book. A mentor of mine, Ruth Wilson Gilmore, has this saying of like, we often say the master's tools will not destroy the master's house. And she reminds us to also like look and remember that there's an apostrophe on the master's tools. The tools are in the possession of the master. But what happens when we, the people, take up those tools? What possibilities can we create? So I think about Freeman, and I think about that sort of like legacy of like, yeah, because when we get into it, we got their tools and we got a whole nother bag of tricks over here, right? So we cannot deny ourselves this knowledge, right? Analyze it, figure out what it can be used to do, but also recognize that we got some other black magic that we got to put into the mix. And like on that note, like this film, as they mentioned, is like subversively the blaxploitation shell and bringing you a third world revolution. And I think about the spaces and places that we all come from, like Detroit and Philadelphia, and the age of black rebellion here. Yes. And I want to take some time, like as we lift up the film and we see these characters that have been drawn from struggle, I think we should also, while we're in a history museum, lift up the real names of who were the Freemans and the Cobras in our communities, right? Who were the people who are on the ground that made this work happen? How do we name those legacies and bring those folks into the fold? So whether from North Philly or also in Detroit, like the Detroit Rebellion of '67, like I just want to be able to like lift up, as we talk about what this film is doing and recovering that history, there's what's on the screen, but it's reminding us that we were doing this in the streets. So I want to take an opportunity to name that in your history of like the folks who put themselves on the line, the folks who didn't step back to make sure that this work continued.
So when I think about that era of time in Detroit, you have the Republic of New Africa comes to mind. Yes. In the Nation of Islam in Detroit, that history, the Shrine of the Black Madonna. Yes. You have Malcolm X giving the message to the grassroots in Detroit, and the Battle of the Bullet in Detroit. You have Martin Luther King, who marches in Detroit in 1963, down Woodward Avenue, and he gives the original "I Have a Dream" speech in Detroit in 1963. So I mean, there's so much. I mean, this is the home of Aretha. You have entrepreneurship with Motown and Berry Gordy. So you coming from that history. You have Marvin Gaye who sings, what's going on in Detroit at that era. I mean, so there's so much coming out of Detroit during that time period, and New Bethel, church in Detroit. So I mean, just so much, and so I carry that on my back. I mean, it informs my work, and Yeah, it's just, it's a blessing. And you just know that this is happening in other parts of the country at the time. 1972, Gary, Indiana, Black power leaders go and meet under the leadership of Mayor Hatcher, and people from all around, everybody from the Black Panther Party to the Nation of Islam to even the SCLC and other groups meet in Gary in 1972. You know what I'm saying?
And that film is out, right? Nation Time.
Oh, Nation Time, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's just so much history there.
Yeah.
Once again, without disclosing my age, my revolutionary activism was initiated not by something that was idealistic. What I mean by that is this. At the time, I was a student at Masterman, and I saw a news report about this sister named Angela Davis. I was enamored. I didn't care about her revolutionary ideology. She was just a beautiful woman, and whatever she was doing, I'm signing up for it. I mean, I had this amazing crush on her just as a beautiful black woman. I realize now it was superficial and it was a man thing, but I gotta confess, that was it. But that was the attraction. And then I remember a story that made me become inspired to go to law school. The story of then 17-year-old Jonathan Jackson in the Marin County Hall of Justice in San Rafael, California, where this kid goes into a courtroom to release Soledad prison brothers, and he got 3 guns in an airline bag. And he walks into a courtroom, he pulls out the guns, he passes them to the 3 or 4 Soledad brothers inside the courtroom, he yells, "I'm a revolutionary," and just sets it off. I mean, a 17-year-old kid does this, and my whole thing was that as powerful as that was in terms of the imagery, what if you had some lawyers on the inside helping out? Like finding out what time the judge gets there and what time the sheriff's arrives and that whole thing. I want to be clear because it's probably being recorded. I'm speaking to hypotheticals. I'm really speaking to hypotheticals. Like, what if, hypothetically, some lawyers had... Yes, absolutely. Had really thought about that, and without going that far, and let me just say this hypothetically, sometimes I fantasize about getting a prognosis from my doctor telling me I got like 3 days to live. And if he tells me I got 3 days to live, imagine what I can do during those 3 days, because I have nothing to lose. Hypothetically, that is. But my point is, for me, it was the whole notion of the Black Panther Party, Angela Davis, and this kid going into a courtroom, pulling out guns and yelling about being revolutionary. For me, that was like so courageous and so powerful. And fast forward now to me being a criminal defense attorney specializing in homicide cases, I tried to, without sounding like their father or their uncle, my young, quote unquote, thug clients, they're really courageous. I mean, these guys are the real deal. I mean, and I try to explain to them, you talked about Public Enemy, where Professor Griff talked about, focusing on the other man, not the brother man. I'm not telling you to go rob banks up on City Avenue. At least I'm not telling you that now, right? Why are you robbing the people in your own neighborhood? Why are you shooting your own people in your neighborhood? In fact, if you're really about the money, go to where the money is. Again, hypothetically speaking. But my point is, their courage, they have no fear. I had, without saying exactly when and where, a 70-year-old client, and I'll wrap this up in 30 seconds. A 70-year-old client is part of a crew going around North Philly robbing people, sticking people up. And one of the guns they had was a revolver. These 3 young men, aged 17, 18, 19, were really playing Russian roulette inside the car as they were driving around looking for somebody to rob. Really playing it. I mean, spinning the barrel. And I'm thinking, if you're that fearless, can you imagine, and that's what Freeman was talking about in the Spook. If you can get those soldiers and redirect them, that would be a powerful, powerful army. And as much as I have been fighting to get Mumia out, I know some young black men who met Mumia on the inside. And he was able to enlighten them and revolutionize them. And when they came out, they were different men. So again, we want people like Mumia out, but while he's in, if he can talk to the quote unquote thugs and redirect their rage, justifiable rage. Can you imagine that army we have, those freedom fighters that Sam Greeley talked about? And before I forget, we got to give our moderator a big round of applause. I love it when we have young people who are ready to take the baton, because that's exactly what he's doing. Take the baton and run with it. I just wanted to thank him. And I hope that by saying that, he'll give me 5 extra minutes at the end of the presentation.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I really appreciate that. You know, I was watching, you know, the movies that release it. It's like, if we don't remember our revolutionary heroes, they will make Leonardo DiCaprio our revolutionary hero and put it in the movies this weekend. That's a great movie. And so we got to remember and do the knowledge on our history, you know. And like you said, like our communities and particularly, you know, film work and a lot of leave us more times in a state of confusion than a state of embracing strategy, right? And that's one of the things that I really loved about the film. And about the work, it's so much of film and media portrayals. You get like the moment of coming into consciousness, and the whole movie is like the trauma and tragedies that you experience, and then the movie towards the end hits with the moment of like, oh, I now realize what the work is, and where the Spook starts with like, we know what the work is, and as Sam Greenlee said in the documentary, the man entered with a plan. He entered with the plan. So how do we get out of rehearsing and replaying and naming the issues every press conference, every community town hall, every year, again and again and again, and saying racism, saying white supremacy, saying capitalism, saying settler colonialism? So, like, how do we get past the ways of naming into what the work is? And in the film in particular, right, there's the scene I think about all the time where Pretty Willie is, you know, saying, oh, why don't we get some real bombs? Like, why we gotta make these little cocktails with the Coca-Cola bottles? He's like, and then Freeman responds like, no, we gotta live off the land. We gotta realize the opportunities that are available in front of us. All these things are immediately accessible in our everyday environment. When we get sophisticated equipment, we use it. But we rely on the people. We rely on what's available in our communities, and we use that. And it shows through historical example where he's looking at Vietnam, where he's looking at the Mau Mau's in Kenya, looking at the legacy of guerrilla struggle that use those same approaches to win against the U.S. government, the most well-funded military apparatus in the world. So that ingenuity, that improvisation was always present. And I'm saying that is my way of being a moderator to get my little point in with the question. But to say that, you know, and this will be my final question before we open it up, is what are the opportunities that we see right now? Like when we say living off the land, the things that are immediately accessible to us, right? What are the missed opportunities to cultivate Black revolution in front of us today? And not just the sort of moment of contestation with the state or federal office or whatever, but like real Black revolution. What are the missed opportunities to cultivate Black revolution today?
I think the main one is technology. Technology. We all have access to technology on a level that we've never had in human history. All right. And as I watched the Spook last night, I'm thinking about Freeman. I'm thinking about that name.
Yes.
And I'm thinking about, you know, so you got the Freeman history, you have that history, but I'm thinking about that in a hip hop context and thinking about where do we see that in popular culture? Oh, Huey Freeman, the Boondocks?
Yes. Yes.
What Aaron McGruder did with the Boondocks, he watched the Spook who sat by the door. The satire, that intellect that he has is amazing and goes through that storyline of the Boondocks, right? So you have this young man who has Huey P. Newton's name, he has the Freeman name, but we also see it in Good Times with Michael Carter, Ralph Carter, who played Michael Evans. They put this intellect, revolutionary thought, and ideas and history in the little boy. So that's why he resonates so much with us. That's why Huey Freeman resonates so much with us. It's so revolutionary, right? So it's that. So if we can do those types of things through cartoons with our young people, all young people love the Boondocks. Yes. You know what I'm saying? Like something just recently came out with the Boondocks with Charlie Kirk. Look it up online. It's amazing what it was able to be done with animation, young people, and that tie-in is incredible. Yeah.
I'm so glad that you mentioned the whole notion of gorillas, because what I did was, I must have read this book about 15, 20 times. And for today's program, I tried to highlight what I found really especially profound. And although this wasn't in the book, it definitely was in the film. And the quote is this: "In guerrilla war, the winning is not losing." Think about that. In guerrilla war, the winning is not losing. The fact that it's almost like these people who go around, hacking people's computer systems and try to scam people, the folks who fight against it will have those scammers on the phone for hours. Because while you have them on the phone for hours, they're not taking a little old lady's savings account. So did you shut down those scammers? No, but you distracted them for an hour, for 2 hours, for 3 hours. And that's exactly how guerrilla warfare should work. And we even look at Jonathan Jackson going to that courtroom. Well, even though he was shot and killed, he didn't lose. He didn't lose because I remember it, and I'm talking about it. Other people remember it. Not that we're going to replicate that, but we know his story. And that's why it's so important. And very quickly, I know we're going to turn it over, the moderator is going to turn it over to the audience, but a few other things that to me are really important. I don't know if we're going to get to the solutions now or later, or proposed solutions, but very quickly, some of the other highlighted parts of the film or the book. In the film, Freeman talked about how black laborers run society. In that city, 90% of the garbage persons were black. 60% of the hospital workers, black. 60% of the bus drivers, black. And 80% of the postal workers, black. If you can get a fraction of those to be part of the revolution, just disrupt stuff. Strategic, discrete acts of sabotage. Just a certain percentage of these. And if that's the case, then we can do some damage, hypothetically.
Yes. So I thank you, and I'm going to open up to the audience. I think just before we do that, we talk about like the winning is not losing, and we talked about like Freeman. It's a free man. We gotta lift up a free woman right now, right? Yes. Mama Assata Shakur, yes. Right, who transitioned very much so recently, whose legacy is still living on today, who left us a blueprint for the work that is to be done ahead. So if you have not, if you don't own Assata's autobiography, if you're not familiar with her legacy, there are many people who are going to be speaking to that, and just continue to engage and maybe pass that. You get Spook and pass that, and pass Assata as well to some young people in your life. So I want to open it up now. I don't know how we are in terms of time, but Morgan's going to come around with some questions.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for today's discussion. Shout outs to Detroit. I'm from Detroit. All right. I've been here in Philly for about 2 years, but my grandfather was an auto worker. I worked at the Kennedy Center. I'm not sure if anyone has read recent headlines, but the chairman of the board now is this country's president. And while I was at the Kennedy Center, I also co-founded an organization called Arts Administrators of Color Network, which got funded by Mackenzie Scott, $1 million. I could go on and on and on. I'm pretty sure, hypothetically, there's a file somewhere in somebody's office about the work that I've been up to. And I'm just curious, for you all, just to hear, like, when there's an awareness that there's a certain level of work that's happened and impact that's been made, like, how do you still work through that, It might be paranoia, but hypothetically, it could be awareness.
For me, I have to admit, I don't respect establishment politics, but I'm a pragmatist. People thought that I was the biggest cheerleader for Madam Vice President Kamala Harris. I wasn't, but I understood the alternative. And my thing to my revolutionary comrades is that somebody was going to be president. It's as simple as that. And sadly, many of my revolutionary comrades just didn't get it. They said, oh, she's a prosecutor, she's a cop, she's that, but she's not a Nazi. She's not a fascist.
And like I said, somebody's going to be president. Somebody's going to be governor. Somebody's going to be mayor. We have to stop being as hardcore revolutionaries, so blindly ideological. I mean, I want Pan-African socialism, but if I have to use capitalism to get there, damn it, I'm going to use that. If I got to vote for the establishment Democrat to beat the Nazi Republican, I'm voting for the establishment Democrat. That's why we can't be as ideological and strident as we are. But to answer your question, it comes down to this. We should use every means at our disposal. And if you can get out on the street and be a hardcore revolutionary fire and brimstone like Pam Africa, do that. But if you can just go to a social media post that's progressive and like it, do that. Gil Scott-Heron said, just because you can't do everything doesn't mean you shouldn't do anything. So find that one thing, these little strategic acts of sabotage, whatever that is, whatever can throw a wrench into the system. Anything you can think. I'm not suggesting that you do something to get locked up, but I'm just saying go with the flow. We all know about the Nat Turners and the Harriet Tubmans and the Gabriel Prossers. We don't know about the woman in the kitchen who put some rat poison in the food. You know, we don't know about her. We don't know about the child that beat up the little white baby because he couldn't beat up the father of the so-called slave master. So my point is, I look at what they went through. I got to tell you very quickly, 30 seconds. I was like bedridden for 2 or 3, and I'm not naive about American history and American politics, but after Orange Hitler won, I was devastated because I'm like, this is going to be the end of the beginning of our brown brothers and sisters, and you can see what's happening with ICE, and I knew it was coming. I was just so beaten down and so just depressed. And one day, I don't know if it was Harriet Tubman or Nat Turner or John Brown said, if you don't get your ass up and get out here and fight back, we went through literal hell. I mean, we were beaten, we were raped, we were sodomized, we were bought and sold, and you just upset about losing the election. So for me, just realize what our ancestors went through. They had less and won more. We have more, so we should stand on their shoulders and fight the good fight. Anything to disrupt the system, minor or major, whatever it is. By the way, I always say 30 seconds, but never mean 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So when I say 30 seconds, that's 5 minutes.
I'll speak into that just quickly as we get to the next question, is to say, like, documentation. The FBI is the files that you got to do the activity with, right? The FBI was writing the reviews of Raising It in a Sun when it premiered in Philadelphia. The FBI was documenting all these. How are we taking the time to document the radical, like, potential of black art? And are we spreading the message? So we also have a responsibility of, like, yes, there's a surveillance, but we do have this thing surrounded. So how do we continue to spread the message across and rely on the collective faith? And also a bit of like coded language. We talk about hip hop, right? Sometimes we always have been figuring out a way to weave important survival knowledge in ways that the master could never understand. So we always got to be about that work too. Sorry.
I want to add to this.
Go ahead, please.
I got to add the story. A few years ago, I get an email from the FBI doing this work. I thought it was a joke until I did a little more research, sent an email back, found out it was actually an FBI agent asking me to come to Quantico to do the museum. My first response is like, how does this happen, right? How does this happen? So I'm ready to, I'm checking, ready to run, really. But my first thought is, man, Sam is not around, because that was my first phone call. Yeah. But Sam did not leave me without support. Yes. There's a brother by the name of Ernie Panicoli. He is a pioneering hip-hop, revolutionary photographer. No one's documented the history of hip-hop culture more so than Ernie Panicoli, Native American, indigenous brother who's phenomenal. He's in his late 70s now. But Sam was a father figure to him as well. So Sam pretty much passed me on to Ernie. So I call Ernie up, and Ernie tells me simply, if they're calling you or reaching out to you, trust me, they did all the research they want on you, and they know who you are, go. Right. So I went by myself, 150 artifacts, Sam Greenlee material on the table as well, just because I want to make sure that he was with me. But one thing I learned about my experience at Quantico is that these individual agents are experts in forensics, without a doubt, much respect in that regard. However, they are not being taught any humanistic history of our people at all. They're straight cut forensics folks, scientific, but they're not getting the information. Just so happens that on that particular tour, I carried a book book where people can sign in and just leave comments. I didn't think they were gonna write anything because it's FBI. I got 5 pages of comments. Thank you for coming into FBI needs this. This was during Green Man's first president, the first one. But they leave it when James Comey was ahead. But they left 5 pages of comments, which is amazing. But we need this on all levels. Information, education. The fact that we're living in a society right now that's pulling funding from the Department of Education and closing the Department of Education,
Yes.
that's crazy. The fact that they're pulling funding from institutions like this, museums where our memory lives, where history is,
Right.
is an issue that we, at this point, we gotta stand up and work towards a better society. We cannot, you can't erase this history. We're carrying it. You can't erase it. So it's very important that that we're in this moment at this point doing this type of work. This is the work that Sam Greenlee did as long as I've known him, and before that. I mean, so it's very important that we're doing this work. So, but I just wanted to share that.
No,
story.
that's a great story. That's a great story. We got time for one more? And I'll just say, also remember the Ivan Dixon lesson. They took the movie, but he had one in the vault, and that's the reason why we have it now.
Yeah.
Get yourself a vault. Go to a black store, I suppose.
Hello. First of all, go Masterman. Yay. Yeah. Go Masterman. So I'm 47 years old, right? About 8 years ago, I started volunteering in my neighborhood, going to community meetings and such. I am now the president of my 501c3 for our community park. Simple, sweet. But it's taken me in places where I didn't expect it to go, and it's given me this fight that I didn't expect to have. I've always had this hidden fight. We not going to take da-da-da. But it's given me this position where I have a little bit more say, right? My struggle is it's such, again, I'm 47, so when I go into rooms, I'm either the minority of the color or the youngest of ages, right? So I'm struggling right now. I live in West Philadelphia, which is, I feel like it's more of an older community. So I have older people who don't care anymore. They're like, we've done our fight, we're not, right? Then I have the younger generation that doesn't have a clue and does not care. Not everybody, but. And then you have my generation who's kind of like half here, right? And it's hard because where I'm trying to advocate for our community, and this is what I will say. I will say that the generation above me and the generation above them fought. They fought for everything, right? So they know what it is to have and to want. My generation came off of that, and we didn't have to fight as much. So we kind of just walked into it. We still deal with racism and things like that. And then the younger generation, my children, it's instant gratification. It's, So I think my question is, like, how do we get the fight back? Is it as much of a fight? No, but it is at the same time, and it's coming back, right? I feel like a minority. I'm in my neighborhood. We went through the trash strike. And I'm sitting in the park, and I'm watching people, and granted, it's a public space, and people will probably dump trash because they always dump trash. But people are walking past me with trash, and I'm like, what are you doing? Oh, I don't care. I'm going to just dump the trash. Like, regardless of the lack of consideration for the other neighbors that you're dumping trash near their houses because you don't want it near your house. And that's just one topic, but it's so frustrating because I don't know which way to go. And I don't really know what my role is right now because I've thought about running for office, or just doing groundwork, staying on the ground, community work. But it's very frustrating because it's a labor of love, but sometimes I don't want to. Sometimes it's a fight, and it's like, what is the purpose? You know what I mean? Because I don't, and I was in with this is, back in the day, in the 60s, I always said I should have been born earlier. I was only born in 78. But there was a purpose. There was a fine purpose. You knew what this was. Now it's kind of like, what are we fighting for? But if we don't take care of ourselves, no one else will, kind of thing. So it's a struggle. So how? Why?
That is a great question, because we talk about solutions. Right. The winning is in not, giving up. You know what I mean?
The quick answer is this. I represent mostly young black men in criminal defense, and they do a lot of really destructive stuff, and many consider them to be thugs. And let's connect those so-called thugs with the people in the neighborhood who throw trash around, black people in black neighborhoods and that kind of thing. Here's the answer. Remember who the real enemy is. What I mean by that is this. People to this day, they've read the book Frankenstein, they've seen the movie 100 times, and they think the monster is Frankenstein. The monster is not Frankenstein. The monster doesn't have a name. Well, who's Frankenstein? Dr. Victor Frankenstein that created the monster. So every time I see my young black male clients doing all the crazy stuff in the neighborhood, I'm thinking, what if they had gotten an opportunity to go to Masterman, or to college, or to whatever? So anytime you see what appears to be quote unquote black on black, and I hate that notion, because when Asians attack Asians, we don't hear yellow on yellow. When Latinos attack Latinos, you don't hear brown on brown. It's only when it's black thing. But in regard to blacks engaging in self-destructive behavior, remember who the real monster is. Don't blame that creature that was going around the village just raping, robbing, and pillaging. Blame the doctor that created the monster. So every time you see those things, remember you got to fight harder against the system that created the kind of mindset that would throw trash in your own neighborhood.
So one of the things that I'm a part of this abolition school project. We got some fans in the building, and or cohort members. Let's be honest. And the project is like, we do a 13-week platform, political education platform, engaging people in sort of like a third world Marxist liberation framework, looking at the history of struggle, looking at different across like global, international, right? And looking at what were the ingredients, what was the sort of like culture that created the capacity for folks to be able to win a revolution. And I think about that work today as like some of that, and I like what you said about like the groundwork and all, it's like the self-sacrifice there of like creating spaces. And I think, and particularly for my generation and younger, we've got sort of like caught into we want a political space, and we don't bring our politics to everywhere we go. We should be in Fresh Grocer organizing. We should be at the local laundromat organizing. We should be outside the schools. Do you know how many young people are in a Wendy's between 3 and 5:30 in Philadelphia? Because they're there because they defunded the community rec center. They're there because that's one of the few places in their community that they're not actively policed until the person comes out from behind the register. So it's like, young people are always hungry, I think hungry for knowledge, hungry for information. And the question is, how do we organize ourselves and get ourselves skilled up? We also have to work through our own internal traumas to be able to be open and meet with young people and not repeat the same violences upon them. And that practice happens in a lot of spaces, right? That can happen across churches. That can happen across the many different 501c3s and nonprofit spaces. But like, we need to be creating more collectives that is educating and deepening the history of how people see themselves, and recognizing that the opportunity to clean up your block is not just about beautification, but about learning how to organize a neighborhood. Like, I talk about like, do we want permit parking on our block, or can we organize a way of ensuring that folks have access to what they need. And if we can organize parking on our block by ourselves, what else can we do together? So like those sense of like building up practice spaces for community power, right, becomes really important for me.
Let me just say this very quickly. After hearing
yeah.
him, I'm retired. I'm officially retired. I'm turning it over to him. That was powerful. Give him a round of applause. And I really mean that.
I think we might have time to sort of like name out some actions before we kind of close it.
Please, go ahead.
Got you. So I just want to make sure, I know we all have a number of things going on, so.
So one thing I want to end with is something that's actionable is this, and this is something I'm very passionate about, and I've been passionate about it since I've been doing the museum work, is taking care of our elders. Yes. Taking care of our elders. Our elders are the receptacles of our lived experience, our knowledge, our collective knowledge. So as I go on out with the museum, I'm carrying these artifacts, knowing that there are people who have lived this history that's still among us, right? So Sam Greenlee was one of those people. Professor Griff is one of those people. I'm right now managing Khalila Ali, Muhammad Ali's former wife. Wow. She travels with me as well. The Last Poets travel with me. I've done work with the Velvelettes and the Watts Prophets and other people. But we have to tap into our elders and make sure that they're taken care of, because too many of them are dying in poverty, broke. I mean, and they should not live the sacrifices that these people made. They should not have to worry about a meal or the rent or health care or anything. And that's our responsibility. So yes, let's do work with the youth. We got to do that, but let's not do that and forget about our elders.
So I would give him some action. I mean, is that connected to the elders? Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead, please.
I just wanted to say that I'm almost 80 years old.
Yes.
And I wanted, and I have had some tremendous health journey, life stuff. I walk my neighborhood. I walk my neighborhood every day. I know every child in the community.
Yes.
They know me. If she comes, they taught their parents, and I live in a multiracial community. We got flags up in the corner for some neighbors who have machine guns, Trump covered up. We got all of that. But even in that, because I'm committed to them, those children, and my contribution to the community is important.
Yes.
So I walk every day. Those parents know me. In fact, there was just a little story. There are a group of men in one particular corner talking about sports and all of that. I hit the corner. I heard out of one of those fathers, "Here comes the walk." My children brought me outside one day and said, "That's Miss Sharon.
Yes.
You need to know who she is."
Right.
They come to my house to ask questions. They come for advice. They come to show me challenges and issues and realities and discussions and concerns. I make them welcome.
Yes.
They belong to me.
Yes.
I'm committed to that as grandmother. I belong to them. They belong to me. I don't know how to
Yes.
fix all this stuff you talk about,
Right.
but I know how to walk the street
Yes.
and hug those children and listen to their story
Yeah.
and teach their parents that those kids matter to me. The man with the machine gun said, "We need you to matter. I want you to come see about my child with his machine gun." So I give you that as a small wisdom.
Thank you, Miss Sharon. I'm glad we know you, and Mike.
Oh, very quickly, two things. One, remember what Gil Scott-Heron said, just because you can't do everything doesn't mean you shouldn't do anything. That's first and foremost. The second thing is join an organization. either join one or create one. And I got a great one for you. ATTAC, ATAC, Avenging the Ancestors Coalition, because we're doing that, Avenging the Ancestors Coalition. And this issue is hot right now from Orange Hitler's attempt to shut down America's first White House at 6th Market. We've expanded ATTAC, so now we've created an army. Basically, what Orange Hitler did, he poked the bear. And this is a multicultural, interracial, interfaith mass movement that you could become a part of. And although the folks actively involved right now don't realize it, we're going beyond this after we win this battle. For example, free Palestine.
Yes, yes. Do we have a moment? Where are we at on time, y'all?
I mean, we're good.
Okay, I do want to acknowledge the elders because we spoke about that.
I'm going to give the mic. Hold on, let me give you the microphone.
I just wanted to ask you to repeat the name of the organization you just
Thank you very much, sir, because I just quickly said it and went over people's head. ATTAC, ATAC, Avenging the Ancestors Coalition. I'm going to give you an email address, a phone number, and a website. Once again, ATAC, ATTAC, Avenging the Ancestors Coalition. The website, avengingtheancestors.com. Avengingtheancestors.com. The email address, atac.avengingtheancestors@gmail.com. atac.avengingtheancestors@gmail.com. And finally, the phone number, 215-552-8751. 215-552-8751. It's bigger than America's White House. We're fighting against, we used to call it creeping fascism in America. It's real fascism in America.
Yeah. Thank you. And as we kind of come to a close here and be able to touch the folks, and I hope everyone connects with people that are next to them as well. Make sure you introduce yourself to the people who are next to you and get comments and connect. I'll just say, like, the thing that started the documentary, right? The riot scene, that it was a filmed riot scene, right? And they were rehearsing the riot scene. But the people didn't know. They took it as real and made it real and made the film come alive by doing it. That's very much so where we are at, right? We are here to rehearse liberation, to rehearse for Black revolution. Where are the practice spaces that we're going to do that? Because it just might be contagious. When we walk our blocks and we talk and we tell the people that, as the song says, I need you to survive, they might actually feel it. So how do we go about doing that work in community, making those connections? I do those things with Abolition School, which is abolitionschool.org. Is in honor of W.E.B. Du Bois and the work of Black Reconstruction. I also do that work with the Tanner House, Friends of the Tanner House, 2908 West Diamond Street. And that work, you know, we look at the Tanner family, looking at legacies across faith, family, freedom, arts, health, and education. How do all those spheres of Black life add up to a thriving Black community, right? So we do that work in Strawberry Mansion and are building out a network supporting Black heritage. We gotta support spaces like the African American Museum of Philadelphia to host and gather us together like this. Let's continue to gather, let's continue to come together. Let's continue, as you know, Freeman said in the movie, right? We gotta continue to organize, and either till we win or we die. And then the work continues on. So let's do our part and pass that off to the future generations. I want to thank my panelists up here. It's been amazing. And let's continue to connect. And thank you all for the space.
Thank you.